to the virtual educational series, the India Reach webinar series. We're looking at aerospace, defence and security market trends, opportunities for Australia and the ASEAN region. My name is Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor and Director for My Security Media and the My Security Marketplace. And we're holding this series in partnership with the Aerospace and Defence Consultants Association of India and our co-host there in Delhi, Raman Sapuri. Raman, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you, Chris.
And this is episode number 5, and we're joined by an esteemed panel across both India and in Australia. We have Mr. Rohit Manchanda, I'll get his title right, Trade and Investment Commissioner for India with the New South Wales Government. And Rohit, you're in Delhi also, so thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. And we're also joined by Prerana Mehta, the Chief of Ecosystem and Development with the Australian Cybersecurity Growth Network, and Shivangi Jain, the Head of Cooperation and Global Partnerships with Startup India. Prerana and Shivangi, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure. And
we also have Sri Vathsen. He's in Singapore. Sri is going to give us a startup presentation a little bit later as well. Here is his with VMTL. Thanks for joining us, Sri. Very good. And I had a brief look at your slides, Sri. So for the audience, you're going to get a good taste of some virtual reality a little bit later on. I thought it was very good and looking forward to this particular session. And really, you are the purpose of us holding this particular session in terms of the startups. We're looking at innovation, startups and cybersecurity ecosystem development between both Australia and in India. For those who are joining us or are trying to keep up with our week-to-week episodes, with being episode 5, our previous 4 episodes are available on our YouTube channel. We have a playlist and also on the India webinar series page on the My Security Marketplace. So simply you can just go there and have a look at the previous episodes. And this is a wonderful, we had a great segue episode last week with the Ambassador for Cyber Affairs and Critical Technology, Dr. Tobias Beacon, just talking about sort of the strategic approach that Australia is taking and the links in there with India as well. And even before the week before that with the Optus Macquarie Cybersecurity Hub, and that was the purpose of our trip to India last year as well with the New South Wales Government. So this particular episode brings a lot together, and I've been looking forward to this particular episode as well in terms of the discussions. We're going to just touch on the news of the day. We couldn't be in a more interesting time. In fact, according to the UN Secretary General, the world is at breaking point. And I think we can look at any direction. I'm giving a talk tomorrow on the SITREP for 2020. And we should take bets on how 2020 is going to pan out, because there's no way anyone knows where we're actually heading. But it's an interesting speech, particularly on the inequality, and it's something both Australia and India are grappling with also. Some other news. This is a very interesting report on the COVID-19 crisis impact and implications. We do have a COVID resources page on the marketplace, which pulls in any COVID-related content, be that reports or white papers or even webinars and the like, and news, and some updates there from the International Monetary Fund. We're looking at about a 6% turnaround on the economic outlooks. What was a 3.3% growth estimate is now a 3% contraction. So that's a significant turnaround that we are facing for the rest of this financial year. Some aerospace news. India is getting its fully armed Rafale combat aircraft in the next 10 days. I like the way India gave China a bit of a warning there. They've got 9 days to go before your weapon systems come in. I don't know how this is working. But then also Australia with the F-35 Joint Striker Fighter program here in Australia. This is out of the Defence Minister's news in terms of the maintenance program in Australia is underway as well, and that's been a significant sort of program that's been going on, and we've been involved with that program since 2012 when I was in the US with Lockheed Martin. So it's been a long time story developing. This is from Raman, and Raman, thanks for these updates. The Indian market from Amazon has just kicked in over $2 billion turnover. Some 60,000 Indian exporters from different parts of the country taking the Made in India products global. Very interesting news, and that's since 2015 that has grown. So interesting report there on the micro, small, medium enterprise market on Amazon. Some other news this week was the India smartphone shipments down by about 48% in Q2 2020. That's from the Canalys report on just smartphones alone. And interesting, also your Consumer Protection Act in 2019 kicks in India as well in terms of the product placements and product information that needs to be placed on. So again, both of those interesting points. And we've kind of come back to the economic impacts of COVID-19, both on the ICT spending sector in Australia, looking at about a decline of just under 6% for 2020, although that's in contrast to nearly a 30% uptake in teleconferencing and remote workforce development as well. So there's a contrast on overall ICT spending. And likewise in Singapore, the communication vertical is probably the silver lining, much like what we're seeing in Australia, but overall ICT spending is on a decline as companies grapple with the new economic outlook. And I just mentioned this before we came online, the Australian 2020 Cybersecurity Strategy, the Industry Advisory Panel report has just come out this afternoon. I haven't read it in detail. It's a text-heavy report, I will say, but and I didn't even count how many recommendations. How many recommendations was there, P? Did you notice?
I'm not sure. That's a trick question. I only went to the search find.
We just gave the exactly right, the executive summary. But obviously they're following the 5 key pillars here in terms of their findings. This will be on the marketplace by tomorrow morning in our newsletter, but obviously covering off on deterrence, prevention, detection, resilience, and investment. And I think the first recommendation is looking at the deterrence factor, that there should be consequences if you are attacking the likes of Australia and the like. How that actually happens, we're yet to find out. On the Cyber Risk Leaders magazine, just another article highlight, top trends that you should inform your COVID-19 security posture. Now, this is a handout, so for the audience that have joined us so far, there is a handout available on your menu, and there are 5 handouts there, so you should be able to download that copy. This is a one-off, and we're about to close that onto the marketplace where you'll need to actually be a member, but welcome to download that particular file. And we are now going to join our panel. Rohit, it sounds like we've got you online without too much of a problem. So just for the audience, the format for this particular session, we're going to hear from Rohit, then from Prerana, and then from Shivangi, just to each introduce their respective roles. Rohit, I can give you a formal introduction if you wish. You've been the New South Wales Trade and Investment Commissioner since 2009, and you also won the New South Wales Premier's Chief Minister's Public Service Award in 2018. I imagine, hopefully from the audience perspective, I won't read out your entire profile, but you know you're an esteemed Trade Commissioner and very well known in our markets here, obviously in New South Wales government, and I'm sure also in the Indian market also. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you. For the audience, if you have a question as we go through this session, you can raise your hand, just press that button, or ask your question, just type in your question, and at the opportune time, I'll raise that for you. So Mr. Manchanda, the New South Wales Trade and Investment Commissioner for New South Wales to India, welcome.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you very much, Raman, as well, for the opportunity today to have this interaction. To the viewers in Australia, good afternoon. To the viewers in India, good morning. I'm delighted to be here to have this interaction. Chris has spoken about ecosystem development as being the topic for today. And I reckon, you know, an ecosystem development is like developing an Indian curry or making an Indian curry. You need all the right ingredients to be put at the right time, to be cooked at the right temperature, and voila, you have a great curry. And that's how in my opinion, an ecosystem develops, which has got all the right ingredients, right from the talent availability to the location, to the right corporates partnering, and making use of the talent and developing great solutions over a period of time. So as I go through my presentation, I hope that I'll be able to give you some insights on why New South Wales has a great ecosystem for cybersecurity, what we are doing in terms of work in the area of cybersecurity, and what the opportunities of collaboration are. And I'll leave it to our experts, Prerana and Shivangi, to actually speak about cybersecurity, and the nitty-gritties of that particular sector. So, Chris, with that, may I request you to take me to the next slide, please? Thank you.
Here we go.
Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are two logos that you're very familiar with, and you're also aware that these are we can't do without these. Both of these technologies were developed in New South Wales. Google Maps was developed in Sydney, while Wi-Fi was developed in the Cyro Labs in New South Wales. So, two inventions that give you an indication of the capabilities that New South Wales and Australia have as far as technological innovation goes. Next one, please. Now, some of you may not be familiar with New South Wales, but very familiar with our capital city, Sydney. New South Wales is largest state of Australia economically, with approximately a $620 billion economy, 1/3 of Australia's economy. The state also has 1/3 of Australia's population, as well as 1/3 of Australia's workforce. So the largest market also that Australia has to offer. The next one, please. And the state has had 28 years of continuous economic growth. That may change with the current pandemic, that is taking place. Very friendly government with a AAA credit rating for a number of years, and a great place to live and work in. Next one, please. Now, the state is also investing a lot in infrastructure. The state now has over $100 billion worth of infrastructure projects. These include creating new tech precincts called Tech Central now in Sydney, a new airport in Sydney, a new area around the airport called the Aerotropolis, which is going to get developed as a defense, aerospace, technology and education hub, and a host of other infrastructure projects in road, rail, highways, intercity trains, etc. And that also provides a lot of opportunities for technologies to go into these infrastructure projects. Next one, please. And the state is also very sustainable and focusing on having sustainability as a key mantra. A new precinct that has been created in Sydney called Barangaroo, which is a mini CBD within the existing Sydney CBD, with an investment of over $2 billion, is a green precinct. It's carbon neutral, water positive, and generates zero waste, which is again very important to have responsible developments taking place. And again, tremendous amount of technology going in these kind of developments. Next one, please. And the state of New South Wales also leads on innovation and global connections. We move on to the next one. Now, Sydney has more than half of Australia's startups and is ranked number 17 amongst the top 20 most innovative cities in the world. It's the only Australian city to be in the list of top 20. Bangalore from India is on number 20 on that list. The next one, please. Now, if you look at fintech, Sydney is amongst the top 3 emerging fintech hubs globally. We were amongst the first, in Asia, probably in the APAC region, to set up a fintech hub called Stone and Chalk about 4 years ago. That is now very well regarded around the world and has produced a number of great startups in that area, and a number of innovations have come out of that hub. Next one, please. The government in February 2018 launched the Sydney Startup Hub. It's the first of its kind in Australia, with about 1,700 square meters in a building, 11 floors, in the heart of the Sydney CBD. And the New South Wales government is investing about $35 billion over the next 5 years in the development of this hub. Now, this hub has got leading corporates from around the world as partners. They are nurturing 2,500 residents. And this hub now is acting as a catalyst for the startup ecosystem, not only in New South Wales, but in Australia. And there are now plans to replicate this hub in Tech Central, which is the new technological development that is going to take place, and take it on further. This hub also collaborates with organizations from around the world, and we work with the hub very closely to showcase New South Wales innovation and also to explore opportunities between New South Wales and India for collaboration. Next one, please. Now, for New South Wales companies who are on this webinar, you would want to know what is the real India opportunity. So in our opinion, as far as innovation and technology goes, New South Wales can supply technology to Indian companies because one, they are hungry for innovation. Two, Indian companies do not want to reinvent the wheel. And lastly, they have tremendous commercialization capability. India, with a population of 1.4 billion compared to 25 million in Australia, again offers that opportunity. Two, Indian companies also are able to take New South Wales innovation global. And to give you an example, we had a RegTech who was shortlisted by a global bank's accelerator out of Bangalore in India to develop a solution for them, to solve a problem for them. And now that solution is with the bank's global board in Paris being evaluated. If it is successful, it will be a New South Wales fintech, a RegTech, developing a solution in India and delivering it for the world. So that's the kind of collaboration that is possible between our ecosystems. And India is also a global hub now for innovation. If you look at the likes of Microsoft, Google, Apple, and various others, they have very large R&D centers out of India. And in most cases, their largest R&D centers out of the United States are actually in India. So India does offer a global opportunity and not just the opportunity for the Indian market. Next one, please.
Something we noticed last week, Rohit, was Google's investing $10 billion into the Indian market. That was announced last week.
Yeah. Now, talking about the New South Wales India Technology Program, this is a program that was launched by the Honourable Premier of New South Wales during her visit to India in April 2018. This program is the largest program globally into India by a region to showcase and explore opportunities for startups in the Indian market. In the past 2 years, we've already brought 60 New South Wales startups into the Indian market in the areas of fintech, cybersecurity, agtech, advanced manufacturing, medtech, sustainable tech, water, etc. And many of these companies, since their visits, they had the opportunity to meet with various key stakeholders in the Indian market, including potential customers, potential partners, venture capitalists, etc. And many of them are now successful in offering their products and services in the Indian market. Next one, please.
Rohit, just on the defence and aerospace as well, there was a cohort from Australia went to India in terms of the startup ecosystem?
Yes, we had a couple from the defence and aerospace area as part of one of our programs, and both are now exploring opportunities in the Indian market.
Great. Okay.
In terms of a summary of what we've done in this program, we brought 8 startup delegations to India. As I mentioned earlier, 60 of them have made it to India, met with all the people in the Indian ecosystem, and have resulted in a number of outcomes. The next one, please. So the New South Wales Cybersecurity delegation to India visited in September 2019. And this delegation consisted of 12 members, 7 startups, 3 from the Optus Macquarie Cybersecurity Hub, who are our partners for this delegation, and 2 from Optus, their technology leaders were also part of this delegation. This delegation met with all the leading Indian players, including various financial services giants, ICT giants, the stock exchanges who are using tremendous amount of technology, and other startups as well to look at collaboration opportunities. Out of this delegation, one company has already established a presence in India and Bangalore. They've set up their office and are winning business. And there's another one that has been selected for a fintech program to provide their cybersecurity offerings This is being run by Startup or So in partnership with the Maharashtra government. They are part of that virtual program, and that was announced in June last month. With others, they have done a number of demos and are working with potential Indian partners and customers to provide their services in due course. Next one, please.
Right. There's a good-looking guy in that photo there. That was actually.
So just to wrap up the recent announcements by the New South Wales government in terms of cybersecurity. There's a $240 million commitment to improve New South Wales cybersecurity capabilities. This was announced by the Minister Victor Dominero, who is the Minister for Customer Service in New South Wales late last month. There is a establishment of a cybersecurity vulnerability management center in Bathurst, which is about 200 kilometers west of Sydney. And there is also a new 2020 New South Wales cybersecurity strategy being developed by the New South Wales government. Again, a lot more opportunities will be on offer as these strategies get developed, as these commitments get rolled out back in New South Wales. These would offer not only opportunities for New South Wales companies, but also for Indian companies to collaborate, to partner with, and deliver some of those solutions in New South Wales and back in India. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I'll come back to what I started off with. An ecosystem is like an Indian curry, needs all the right ingredients, need to be mixed at the right time, at the right temperature, and prepared well. We hope that New South Wales is that ecosystem for cybersecurity, and we look forward to the opportunity of working and collaborating with you. The last slide has my contact details, and I'm based out of the New South Wales government's office in Mumbai. Thank you very much again for joining us today. And thank you, Chris and Raman, again for this opportunity. Over to you.
Thank you very much for that, Rohit. Very much appreciate that. An excellent overview. And you're the first one who's actually mentioned Indian curry, episode 5. It's taken that long. So, Raman, I don't know what you've been doing, but where's the first mention of the curry?
Yeah, I have got a small point for Mr. Rohit. First of all, thank you so much for giving a positive presentation. And I lived half my career in Bangalore. Now I'm based in Delhi. So my association is also having a lot of startups. One of them is going to present today. But we do have the Indian small medium enterprise. And the government of India is now ensuring that 30% of the contracts given to the aerospace, defense, and any other organization go to the small enterprises. I have been mentoring a lot of students in IIT Delhi myself, and some of my students have become my own competition. So that's a very wonderful thing. I've been working out of the IBM Research Lab with 6 students and doing. So no matter where you are, if you have an idea, my organization is wanting to assist the students and the students also and the teachers also. It's not the old guard of doing a degree of engineering or anything else for 4 to 5 years and then looking for a job. Today, every student has become an entrepreneur in India. And I am mentoring a company in Israel and also one small startup in USA. So we'd like to discuss further with Mr. Rohit Manchanda and with the co-panelists later this week or next week. Yeah. Thank you. Over to Chris.
Thank you very much. Rohit, there's no clear questions, but we'll definitely stay in touch in terms of the New South Wales cybersecurity strategy, the Australian National Cybersecurity Strategy as well. Looks like it's starting to get put together as also. And we'll also, obviously, in my own sort of networking with the cybersecurity cohort that visited last year, some of the news that comes out of that, and continuing to liaise with those. In fact, Jackie Nelson from Deco Secure missed last week's episode because she was on the phone to Chennai. So that was a pretty good example there. Okay, here we go. We do have a question. What makes New South Wales unique than other states, territories in Australia for developing world-class startup hubs? Is it easier to find access or technology or research university or something else? So what would you say, maybe just revisiting what makes New South Wales unique than other states and territories?
Sure. Thank you, Chris. Because of the shortage of time, I didn't get into a deep dive, on a number of areas. But one thing which I didn't say, and I'd like to point out now, is that you need a very good education ecosystem for the development of technology and innovation. And one of those things that New South Wales has is 11 universities, 2 ranked in the world top 50. Many of these universities are doing tremendous amount of research in new age technologies like artificial intelligence, data analytics, quantum computing, cybersecurity, so on and so forth. And coupled with the talent, a supportive government and industry that is willing to partner with the government, with the academia, I think all these things put together make New South Wales the hub for innovations. And that's the reason why you see innovations like Google Maps and Wi-Fi coming out of the state as well, apart from new age companies like Atlassian and various others. So that's also the reason why New South Wales has, or Sydney as a city itself, has more than 50% of all of Australia's startups. And we spoke about the continuous investment by the government, continuously looking at collaboration opportunities within Australia and beyond the Australian shores. I think all that makes New South Wales the key hub for innovation in Australia. And one point in general I would like to make about Australia. Australia is a very innovative nation. And when you have 25 million people managing a continent, you've got to be very innovative. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to manage a continent. And Australia proves, that those are the innovations that help them in managing this massive continent.
Very good answer, and it's a great segue over to you, Prerana. I'm just going to hand over the reins to you. You should get a call there. Wonderful, seamless.
Brilliant. Can you see my screen?
We can. Go for it.
Fantastic. Okay. Great. Okay. Look, hi everyone. So my name's Prerana. I'm the Chief of Ecosystem Development. I think after a conversation actually that we had as part of our pre-planning, I've decided to kind of make my presentation fairly casual, with the idea that as we get questions, I'm happy to kind of answer it. And then I think Shivangi and I were really kind of happy to take questions after her presentation as well. Look, I think, what I thought I might start with is talk about the 3 items that I think were most relevant for you as the audience. So we've recently, I think last week actually, just released our Digital Trust Report. And that's a report that talks about the impact that cybersecurity has on the Australian economy. And we've actually taken it down to the value that digital, activity in Australia provides in gross domestic economic activity. So the answer to that is actually $1 trillion in global economic activity, and the number of jobs that it equates to. So what we found as part of our modelling was that 1 in 6 jobs in Australia relies on digital trust, I guess, and digital activity. The second report there is our sector competitiveness plan. I think Chris is already kind of sending it around for you to have a look at. But that is the document that we update every year, and that's got some statistics around, but again, not so much the value that cybersecurity provides to the economy, but more about jobs, growth, the number of employees that we're looking at bridging a gap in Australia in cybersecurity. So we know, for example, there'll be 18,000 jobs expected by 2025. We don't have 18,000 students studying cybersecurity, so where are we going to find these individuals? And the third report I wanted to point out to you was actually a report that we did in partnership with Austrade. It's called the, Defence Industry Capability Matrix, and it lists a number of Australian cybersecurity companies, including Deco Secure, who are currently servicing defence and or are dual purpose fit for defence solutions as well. So there are 3 reports that you might want to get across. Okay, a couple of other stats. I've mentioned already that global spend on cybersecurity is expected to be about 250 billion. In India, cybersecurity market is expected to grow. So currently it's about 1.97 billion, but by 2022 it's expected to grow to about US 3.05 billion. So that's a massive growth, in fact. I've also already mentioned, the Digital Trust Report. And so I think there's some figures there for you to kind of look through. Okay, so I've spoken a little bit about reports and I've thrown out a couple of stats, but who is AustCyber? So we are a government-funded organisation. We're independent, so we're not an industry organisation. We don't have members, but we are funded by government, and that allows us to actually represent both government and industry. We have a very clear mandate, and it's to do three things. The first is we have to grow the Australian cybersecurity ecosystem. And by that, we mean we provide, I guess, the scaffolding and the infrastructure and the tools to equip cybersecurity startups and entrepreneurs and SMEs to be able to grow. Currently, we've got about 350 Australian cybersecurity companies. And Ravi, you'll be pleased to know that about, I think a large portion of them actually come out of New South Wales. So New South Wales actually leads on the number of cybers coming out of that particular state. And the second state is Victoria. The third state is actually Canberra, who punches way above its weight in terms of cybersecurity capability, probably because of the strong defence angle that's here in Canberra. And then that's followed by South Australia, who also have a very strong defence cluster in Adelaide. The second thing we do is we export Australia's cybersecurity capability to the world. And that really means we provide the support that's required for these companies to secure investment, to have access to global capital markets. So that includes from investors in India, as well as Singapore, the US and UK. And we do things like take them on missions. So the New South Wales mission for cybersecurity, we had a couple of companies, for example, that we supported by partially subsidising their involvement in that particular mission. We also focus on providing a strong advocacy or policy voice on international and national issues. So, for example, there's a lot of conversation at the moment about data security. So we are very vocal in providing guidance to government around data and how that information should be accessed. And another thing we do, for example, is speak at the World Economic Forum. So I was there last year as part of their cyber security group, looking at how we can actually grow cyber ecosystems globally and how we can learn from each other to be able to do that. Lastly, we're here to make Australia the leading centre for cyber education. And that is really twofold. The first is around kind of making sure that the research and development leads to commercialisation, and that commercialisation is linked to the demands of industry. And the second part of that is around creating a skilled cyber workforce. So that means working with students in primary, secondary, tertiary education systems, working with Polytechnic or TAFE, which are kind of our hands-on institutions, to make sure that we've got the practical cyber understanding, as well as work with universities around the curriculum. And one thing that we've started to do is actually teach the teachers about cyber. So it's one thing producing people that are coming out with a master's degree in cybersecurity. We think that's great, but actually if you can't apply it constructively in real life situations, then I'm not sure it's great. So what we're trying to do is nuance that curricula to be able to make sure that it's practical. So that's what we do. So I keep going backwards rather than forwards. I wanted to, because of the audience, I guess I wanted to give a bit of a flavour of the kind of work that we are doing in cyber. So obviously national security, defence, intelligence, electronic warfare, so offensive and defensive cyber is something that we work closely with our Australian Defence Force with. We've got significant capability, and that capability is actually growing. We work very closely with our Five Eyes community, but we are also working increasingly with India and Singapore and Japan as some of our partners. So I think this is a really good opportunity for us to explore what some of those partnerships might look like. And we have a range of kind of areas that we can play in, I guess. Everything from secure software packages. I've talked about data intelligence, but we also do a lot of work around analytics, application of cyber to AI, application of cyber to quantum computing, for example, and then how do we then apply that to signals. So it's really quite broad, the kind of work that we're doing. I wanted to be able to paint a picture of what the cybersecurity ecosystem looks like in Australia. And to be honest, it's a little bit muddy. So it's a little bit complex. We don't have a very clear one federal agency that looks after cyber. It's actually chopped into a couple of pieces. So we have Australia's cybersecurity strategy, and that's actually written or authored by, penned by Department of Home Affairs. We then have the Australian Centre for Cyber Security, and that is actually part of ASD, the Australian Cyber Signals Directorate. They're responsible for providing critical infrastructure support to our cyber companies, and they're also there to provide guidance around the Essential 8, so some of the standards that need to be applied by industry. We have ourselves, AustCyber, so we're kind of, I guess, the link between government and industry, and our job's to help industry grow, and we actually sit within another department, the Department of Industry. We've also got cybersecurity policy, and part of that policy is written actually by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. They also are responsible for our relationships both within the ASEAN but also the ASEAN Pacific region as well. So the recent MOUs and the partnerships that we've signed with India would actually be led by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. And then, of course, we've got our regulators and legislation that we also need to look at. In addition to that, we've got our standards organisations, we've got states and territories, of which New South Wales is one. We've got quite a strong startup ecosystem, so we've got a number of accelerators and incubators. And I guess because cyber is one of those sectors that's enabling across multiple sectors, it means that we're heavily involved in a number of priority areas. So defence is one of them, space, education, health/medtech, financial services, and through financial services we touch on fintech, regtech, insurtech, agtech a little bit, but not too much, but certainly renewable energy is an area that we're also focusing on. And that brings me actually really nicely to some of the work that is happening in New South Wales, which is around the standards harmonisation piece. So we're actually working with one of the state ministers to be able to develop a framework of what best practice and cybersecurity standards looks like. So what is the minimum requirement if you're a business in the energy renewable area? What do you need to know? What are the minimum standards that you need to have to be able to compete nationally, but also to be able to compete globally? And I think probably last on that list are the universities and schools, and then of course the Department of Communication that actually runs a lot of our cyber awareness programs. So I guess the summary is it's pretty complicated. It's not easy to be able to find your way. Sorry, I keep going backwards, my apologies. And look, I don't need to spell this out, but really accelerated innovation and COVID, I think, really proves that, really only equates to higher risk. Global value chains, which is something that all of the defence community's involvement in, also means high risk, because the more complex value chains become, the higher the risk there is. And a lot of our work comes back down to helping build that trust. So ensuring that at every step of the way, whether we're working with a defence prime or whether we're working with the Australian Defence Forces, we're making sure that we've got the right standards in place, the right accreditation in place, and that really we've thought about cyber as much as possible. I'm going to stop my presentation there. So you're welcome to stop screen share, and I'm happy to take any questions, or I'm happy to wait until after Shivangi's presentation as well.
Thank you, Prerana. We do have a question. I've just lost it off the screen as I was bringing back. Let me bring back my screen. Just 1 second. Should be screen 2. Hang on. There you are. Now let me just find this question. I had a question while I'm finding the other question. Sometimes with what Rohit has also raised with the New South Wales government, you've also got New South Wales Defence, and then you've got the federal aspects of almost the similar, and I think obviously New South Wales is one of the largest states. what would be your advice to the startup community on that? Because now you're dealing with two very large systems offering opportunities, and you have to align yourselves to those. Where do you see that fitting at the moment? Because I see them as separate, but would you deal with them at the same? Is it doubling up? Where would they dovetail? What type of advice would you have on how those two systems operate?
So they are very separate. So each of the state and territories have a separate, I guess, cybersecurity strategy, and they also have separate defence clusters or defence areas. South Australia, I mentioned before, is another great example where you've got, a team that are very actively involved in ensuring that there's procurement projects that come to their specific area. And the same with New South Wales and WA and Queensland also kind of are all there. So they're all quite competitive. And I think that actually throws out opportunity because you can actually, if you're a cybersecurity company or if you're a startup that has dual purpose technology fit for fintech and cyber or defense, absolutely explore. And I would always start small. So start with the states and territories first, because they're slightly easier to potentially navigate, and then work your way up to federal, who actually are incredibly different in the way that they'll do procurements, and they'll be very different in the, I guess, the methodology, the process, and the requirements that they'll be needing as well.
Nice.
So yeah, quite different.
Okay, and I've got, and conscious of time, but I've got one more for you. How do you see current cybersecurity education standards and infrastructure in India as compared to Australia? What can be done to further boost ecosystem between both countries? Education standards. In fact, I was going to highlight, we have Prerana on next Monday with the New South Wales Cybersecurity Task Force and Standards Australia and industry. So that you can tune in next Monday, which will be early, about 8:30 Indian time when we kick off. But education standards, you've done a lot of work in this space over the last 2 years, bringing that up to speed as well, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, 2 years ago, I don't think we actually had a very good understanding at all of what was required for Australia, let alone what was required globally when it came to, a baseline understanding of cybersecurity. I actually think that thanks to COVID, most humans are now a little bit more aware. And I think most of industry, so any organisation, are also a little bit more receptive and a bit more understanding of the importance of cyber and how do you keep your information safe. How should I be sharing my data? Those kind of questions are now, I think, a little bit more, are probably resonating a little bit stronger. And of course, the whole thing around global value chains has really come to rise as well, because the discussion around how do we ensure we have our own sovereign capability, which is kind of, I love that making it in India program. How do we build that? But how do we also build partnerships outside of our own country? So going back to education, I think that's a perfect partnership arrangement, because actually what we're trying to do is increase knowledge. So a lot of our Cert 4 and cybersecurity courses are offered to international students. Some of, a majority of our international students actually come out of India. And so I think there's an absolute opportunity for us to be able to share actual curricula, whether that's at university level or whether that's at a TAFE level, with institutions as well as corporates. I think we need to get corporates to mentor and take cyber individuals.
I'm not too surprised by that question. And Raman, 1 second, but education, cybersecurity education has been a strong theme. We haven't been able to get away from it actually, hence. But Raman, before we hand over to Shivangi. Raman, I've got you on mute. Hang on, there you go. Go.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Thanks for the nice presentation. I have 2 questions. The question is on the data security and data integrity. The question is, a lot of my senior clients are saying, I would not like to join the webinar because I am supposed to fill up a form and give my details. We don't know where the Google forms are going and all that stuff. So India and Australia both are democratic countries. Now, how do we ensure the cybersecurity vis-a-vis the safety and security of the data which the clients are sharing on many platforms, mobile phones, and so many devices? So that is one question. My second question is on the training part of it. Australia, as I know, is a hub for a lot of training, including cybersecurity. I have a dream project which I'm discussing with Mr. Chris to set up a cyber university in India. I would like to take it with you and Shivangi. In the present scenario post-COVID, do we really have to have a brick and mortar university, or we can have it online from India to Australia? But ultimately, I would like to have a cyber, range in India, both for the military, defense, and the civil authorities itself. So these are the two questions I've got. Thank you.
Can I start maybe, Raman, from the last question?
Yes, please.
So I think both Shivangi and I were nodding when you were asking about the virtual compatibility of cyber education, and I think absolutely when it comes to the theory part of cyber education, I think that can be done virtually. When it comes to the practical bit, which is how do you then apply it? So I think you do, to some extent, need to have a cyber range or a SOC. And I think actually what we're trying to do in Australia, and I think it could very easily be replicated in India, and in fact we could potentially even join, is how do you start networking those SOCs? So in fact, you're starting to link with other universities or other education providers so that you're starting to use a pool of data or information that's not just kept within that one institution, it's actually shared. So we're working on a project at the moment where we're linking 10 tertiary institutions together to be able to do that. So it doesn't matter where you're studying in Australia. If you're participating in that, it's actually for the graduate diploma of cybersecurity or the Cert 4, you can actually go in and use, SOCs wherever.
Sure.
The other element to it is actually the data range, which you've kind of mentioned, which I think can potentially act a bit like a sandpit. So how can we actually go in and test and explore and learn and fail and do all of those things that we hope to be able to do without providing risk to companies? And on your data security and integrity question, my gosh, that's a big question. I don't think I've got an answer for you, except that it is increasingly important. You can go down one angle.
There's a supplementary question, which I heard on the internet today, that Microsoft president has been called to appear in a court. That's a headline. And along with that, the other top, people who are collecting a lot of data through Google Maps also. The president of Microsoft is facing a court notice today in USA. Thank you. Over to you, Prerana.
Thank you very much. And I'm just conscious of time.
I don't think I can answer that.
Sorry.
Over to you, Chris.
Thank you. And that's always good. We try, one of our hallmarks is to try and keep them wanting more. Now, I did have your reports up. There should, I don't know how this handouts is working actually. This is the first time that there are handouts. There's 5 there. We did have the competitiveness plan. The digital trust report is also there, which we touched on, and the Australian Defence Cyber Industry Capability Report is there. Otherwise, you can go to the India webinar series page, and the links are there for those reports also. Hang on a minute. Hang on. Where have you gone? I've had your slides here. I've lost your slides. 1 second, Shivangi, before I hand over to you. And I might have to bring up your PDF. Just 1 second, bear with me. I'm just going to stop sharing for a second, one moment. So, okay. I don't know where they went. Hang on.
It's definitely live, Chris.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I'm used to it. I have low expectations of my slide transition. Don't worry about that. We're back on. Hang on. Number 2. Tell me you can see that. Here we go. So thank you, Shivangi Jain from Startup India. Over to you, and thank you for your patience as well.
Thank you so much, Chris and Raman, for having me here. It's actually it's an absolute pleasure to be here. So I think while Prerana has touched spoken about and touched more about, the details and really the specifics of, how the cybersecurity ecosystem in Australia looks like. I think I'm going to speak about the general ecosystem of how, the startup ecosystem in India looks like, and then very specific to cybersecurity opportunities. So if you could, yeah. So Startup India was actually launched in January 2016 by our Honorable Prime Minister of India. So apart from Startup India, there have been a few more initiatives which have been, the government's flagship initiatives which have been launched, including Make in India, Agni, and a few more, which actually, come under the umbrella of Invest India, which is a not-for-profit organization. So while it's an initiative of the government, it comes under the Invest India, and that's how the structure is. While the startup movement in India started long back, it started from around 2010 onwards. As the movement and as the growth of, as there was an accelerated growth, there was an increased requirement and a need of having a central body, because India is a very complex market in terms of opportunities. And that's why a central government nodal agency was required to kind of really monitor and also, support the ecosystem and kind of stitch it together. And that's why the Startup India movement was launched with three main focus areas. Number one is facilitation, which means anybody who's a part of the startup ecosystem in India, be it accelerators, incubators, investors, startups themselves, industry bodies, if they require any kind of help, be it on the policy side, on the regulation side, in terms of connects, recommendations, they can always reach out to us and we facilitate them one-on-one. Second has been in terms of providing government incentives and support to really, promote wealth creation and employment creation. And that's why, a separate set of incentives through a certification process which was developed are being dispersed. And also there's a separate fund of funds that has been set up for providing investment opportunities to the startups in India through around more than 50 AIFs. And third is because the ecosystem really needs to be stitched together, a central platform was launched where we also collaborate with a lot more industry partners on the university, academia, private players, for the government departments, state departments, and so on. Yeah, if you could move to the next slide.
Next one.
Yeah, so this just gives the previous one. Yeah.
The previous, sorry.
Yeah, the one with the India map.
This one?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but this just gives an overview of how the Indian ecosystem looks like. Over the years, of course, we've seen a massive movement. We have more than 80,000 startups that are registered with Startup India, out of which around 32,000 plus are recognized by the government. This means that certain level of due diligence has been done. Another main focus of the initiative has been on growth of tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And over the years, we've seen increasing number of queries and interest level from these areas, while tier 1 is fairly very developed in India and people know who to reach out to and how to connect with people. The main challenge has been in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and that's been one of our main focus areas. Also, I mean, India offers massive opportunity in terms of, really most of the people having an average age of around, 28 to 29 years. So that really provides a lot of potential and opportunity where, a lot of new innovations are coming up. If you could move to the next slide. So this basically, shows like a summary of how traditionally, the sector focus has been and what are the current focus areas and which are the emerging sectors. So if you look at artificial intelligence, which is of course kind of inevitable to kind of most of the sectors right now. Aerospace, defense, I mean, definitely very, very important, right? Very crucial to any growing and developed economy. Travel and hospitality, of course, we've seen a hit because of COVID right now. Otherwise, of course, there was an upward trend there as well. But talking more about the sunrise sector, I mean, with government's major focus with the launch of programs such as Make in India, Digital India, Skill India, Startup India, and also with the demonetization phase that has come in, more Aadhaar accounts being open up. So we have around like 1.2 billion Aadhaar accounts of 1.4 billion large population here, with more and more, internet users of around 500 million plus and mobile users of around 450 million plus. I mean, there has been a very promising and a very strong push towards online and digital mediums, and that's why fintech becomes a prime focus area where we say that of course most of the transactions are going to be digital. And in fact, on the digital side, the CAGR has been around 20%, and it's expected to grow at this rate till 2023 at least. In fact, it might be a little more than that with increased opportunity that the COVID situation has provided us. Health tech has been major focus area with respect to COVID and otherwise, because India's focus has been on building a very strong, health ecosystem. Similarly, enterprise and retail, of course, with online, no contactless delivery. So, of course, that's been one of the major focus areas. And with all of these sectors having, more movement towards online and digital space, of course, that, increases the need for cybersecurity. Of course, we know that there's been, major push from the government with respect to launch of these major initiatives. But majorly the three driving sectors for cybersecurity in India have been the BFSI sector, which is actually seeing a growth rate of 26%. IT, IT organizations and also IT-enabled services, and all of this together in India, comprises of around 68% of the cybersecurity ecosystem here. So these are the major contributing sectors. With respect to other sectors, there's also like a major opportunity where the CAGR is actually expected to be around of 14.6%. So of course, there's a lot of promising opportunity in other sectors also, but major growth has been on the cybersecurity services domain particularly. Startup India works across all the sectors, so we do not have a specific sector focus, but our idea is to really support startups in each of these sectors. Chris, if you could move to the next slide, please.
Yep.
Just touching base on different functions that we as an organization are taking care of. Of course, I've spoken about startup facilitation and recognition, the certification which is being provided by the government to further really promote the innovation ecosystem and provide those benefits. We're also ensuring ease of doing business for the startups, which basically means working with multiple departments and ministries where we work with them very, very closely, be it Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Tax, Revenue, where whatever policy recommendations we get from the ecosystem and also which our team is working on, we work with them very closely, hand in hand, and really come up with those, with those policies and suggestions. There has been of late increasing focus on the sector capabilities and building those capabilities so that high potential sectors can really be promoted. Of course, of the benefits that we speak about, self-certification and fund of funds are certain benefits that are being provided. In terms of stakeholder engagement, this is one of the very important pillars of Startup India, where we really pay high importance to partnerships, be it state partnerships, interministerial partnerships, or partnerships on the private sector. So a few of the initiatives that I would really want to highlight on the stakeholder engagement side would one be on the ministry procurement. So actually working with the government and really getting orders from them has been challenging, has been a big challenge for a very long time, especially when it comes to tenders. So under the Startup India initiative, we have waived off prior turnover requirement and prior experience requirement for many of the startups. There has been a specific notification which has been passed with respect to this. There's also waive off of EMD, which actually goes as a mandate for the tender documents. So that has also been waived off. So that's kind of one part of easing out the process. The second part has been the launch of the government e-marketplace, which we also call as GEM. That's the platform where all of the tenders and all of the projects that the government is looking at, they're actually put across there, and people can really place the orders directly. Now, this is open to everybody, all these private players and everybody else out there in the market. Now, in that GEM platform, we've actually created a separate category called Startup Runway. This is for startups which are recognized by the government under the Startup India program. And all of these waivers are being provided. They can with the same login, they can actually register there as well. And they'll have access to the platform. So a lot of orders have been placed there. So this has really been eased out recently. And of course, we are hoping that more and more startups can actually take advantage of this. We work with incubators and accelerators on capacity development also, and promotion of women entrepreneurship has been one of our major focus areas as well, where a lot of initiatives have been driven towards that. In terms of the funding bit, in the Indian ecosystem, majorly, the challenges have been on the seed funding side, like many of the other markets. While many other markets have a very comprehensive ecosystem, or now at least a framework where that's being eased out. India being the third largest startup ecosystem, we do realize that there's like a major requirement here, and that's why a few of the key policy initiatives have been taken up, where of course we have a funder fund. We are working on a credit guarantee scheme also to really provide the benefit to the startups through the government. Seed funding is also being solved for through the ministry itself. And we also have a central summit that we organize every year. It's called Startup India Global Venture Capital Summit. It happens in December every year, where we call investors from across the countries, from different sectors, where we actually present the India opportunity and also understand their challenges, and come up with policy suggestions, and also give them face time with the government officials, where they can really interact on a real-time basis and really solve for those challenges. If you could move to the next.
I was going to say, we I think in Australia just held Gov Pitch. I think would be something potentially similar to that also.
All right. So talking about a few of the numbers, so Startup India Hub over the years has actually become one of the largest virtual incubation platform, where a lot of users have been registered. So we have around 400,000 plus users who are registered on the platform. And of course, you can see the split on the left-hand side of your screen in terms of how different ecosystem stakeholders are kind of registered, right? With around 85,000 plus being startups. We also conduct many programs to really connect, to really make connects between the private industry and the corporations and the startups, and also between the government and the startups. So we have done over 350 plus programs, and the value of benefits which has been dispersed only through the portal itself through these programs has been of $3 million and above. If you could just move to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about the programs that we've been focusing on, right? So these are a few of the partners that you can see on the screen. So this has been one of our major focus areas, and particularly for me as a part of this team, where we're really, building strong models where, there's a strong connect between the private stakeholders and the innovators in the country, so that they're number one, accelerating innovation. They're reducing the cost of really innovating in-house, because really outsourcing it through the startups who are the experts in the field can actually help them in a massive way. And thirdly, also be updated on what innovations are going on in the market. So while Startup India works in a sector agnostic way, we've done these open innovation calls across sectors, starting from agri-tech, ed-tech to even cybersecurity, where we partnered with SoftBank in 2018, where they were looking for solutions in 4 areas, and one of them was cybersecurity. And in the end, they actually provided a grant of $50,000 plus dollars. So these are the kind of collaborations we work on. I think 2 very interesting collaborations which have happened in India on the cybersecurity domain, especially in terms of open innovation programs. One has been the Cybersecurity Grand Challenge, which was coincidentally launched this year. This was launched in around January 2020, where the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, the mighty ministry in India, in partnership with a few other private players, they actually launched around 6 problem statements, further ranging from microservices to IoT to a few more, where they invited applications, and around 16 of the selected startups are eventually going to get cash grants from the ministry, and a few selected, around 6, are also going to get pilot opportunity, where they can actually have like a strong proof of concept from the government itself, and also work with them in the long term. Second initiative has been more on the defense and the aerospace side. That program is called IDEX. It has been created and conceptualized by the Ministry of Defense in partnership with NITI Aayog, who's actually spearheading this initiative. The idea is to create innovation hubs in different parts of the country with respect to, the new defense technologies coming up. Now, this is also a very sensitive sector, right? So, of course, a lot of due diligence and comparatively the process is longer. However, for this program, they've really, tried to reduce the turnaround time. One objective is setting up innovation hubs. Second is doing hackathons and open challenges where innovators get a central platform where they can actually apply for, apply basis the solutions they have for the respective problem statement and get mentorship from the experts. Also, the idea is for, adoption of indigenous technologies in India and really, feed onto the immense talent that this 1.3 billion large economy offers. So these are the major programs that we've kind of previously worked on with a little focus on the cybersecurity side. So Chris, if you would help me with the next slide. Talking about how we've been trying to create a bridge between India and the rest of the global markets. So while we understand that, of course, India has diverse opportunities and each zone has different opportunities to offer to the market. Yeah, Raman.
Go, Raman. Can you hear me? Sorry. Hang on.
Australia.
Oh, sorry. My fault.
We can hear you.
Sorry. Go, Raman.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can.
I was looking for Australia flag.
That's what I was going to say.
I was actually coming to that. In terms of international market access that we are trying to provide, we actually have conversation and access conversations for really core programs with around 15 plus countries, while we have relations with almost all of our embassies. The ones which you see on the screen are the ones where we've actually launched formal bridges, which means between Startup India and our counterpart, for example, in this case, it's going to be Austrade, or maybe between the two governments. So these are the ones which have formally been launched. Hopefully in the next 6 months, Australia is also going to be on this slide because we are already working with Austrade very, very closely and also with our embassy in Australia. The major objective of doing these programs is actually multifold. Number one, so that the Indian, of course, there's a lot to learn from each other and there's a lot of exchange of best practices that needs to happen within the ecosystem, but it also needs to happen at a global level where, Indian startups are actually, they have a yardstick in terms of, really learning and also competing with the best in the world and really growing themselves. So that's why we provide this market access program. This is being done online as well, and we also provide hard landing market access as well. So these are done in terms of event participation, exchange programs, launching joint innovation fund like we have with UK. Also working on these open innovation challenges like we worked with SoftBank for Japan, we worked with SBI and Mahindra for South Korea. We also had focused program with Israel on health, agri and water management. And this was again an exchange program where applications were invited from innovators in both the markets. In fact, very interestingly, we also have recently signed an agreement with Israel for really promoting and also for looking out for innovations in the cyber security market, because of course there are a lot of learnings that can happen from Israel. So this bilateral partnership has also happened of late.
Shivangi, I've got one question here from who's defining the cybersecurity startups for defence? Sorry, beg your pardon. Who is defining problems in cyber startups for defence? Is it a respective service HQ, NTRO, or any other setup? So who's defining problems in cyber for the startups in defence?
Can I answer that question, Chris?
We'll give Shivangi one opportunity.
Okay.
Double check. Go, Shivangi.
I think firstly just talking about how the innovation ecosystem for cybersecurity specifically looks like, I mean, of course, we spoke about the opportunity that the market has to offer, and how promising the growth is expected to be. Honestly, fairly, we have lesser number of startups in the cybersecurity domain. We have around 200 to 300 startups which are actually in the cybersecurity domain, because even to kind of collaborate on the cybersecurity front, I mean, it's extremely sensitive. So right now, definitely the startups in this segment are facing challenges in terms of formalizing a partnership with, let's say, a private player or a government player. With private players, at least in my experience, I've seen that it's been easier as compared to the government player, because with government comes a lot of rules and regulations, and also a lot of due diligence that needs to be done. So of course that has been recognized, but it's also being solved for. For example, I spoke about the cybersecurity grand challenge that has been launched by the concerned ministry, the Ministry of IT in India. So that's also being addressed, and that's also being really recognized and being solved for here.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time. We're going way over time, so I think any other questions, we do obviously capture those on this system, and we can come offline. And we would like to hear, I think, Shivangi, thank you so much for that. And I think it's a good introduction to Sri as well in terms of an actual Indian startup and that story. And I think we'll try to keep in touch with you also. It's a much bigger sort of system here in terms of what you're running. There's a lot of questions, so I'm sorry we've run out of time, but your details are there in terms of startupindia.gov.in, and I've also got some notes. The Startup India portal is something we'll have a look at as well. So the only other thing I wanted to raise in the contrast there is, from what I see in Australia and what I see in India, is India defines its startup sector much better. I don't think I've seen something in Australia that defines what a startup actually is, whereas in India you have a defined, what actually is a startup. So correct me if I'm wrong, P, but I think it's something. It's quite the contrast. So on that note, sorry, go.
And I was just saying, I agree. I think it is a little bit more fragmented, and I think it is quite, instead of looking at it nationally, I think it is either tended to be looked at from a sector perspective or as at a state level.
Yeah. Also, I think in India we do have a specific startup definition. But I think also one similarity is, as Prerana mentioned in her presentation, right? Even for us, I mean, there's no central body. There are actually 36 bodies that are taking care of cybersecurity for their own respective departments and ministries. There is a central policy, but there's no central department. So each department has their own set of team who's taking care of it. But thank you so much, Shravan, for having me here. And pleasure. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, Shivangi. And I think on that note, you're very welcome to stay on and hear from Sri. I appreciate the time. Likewise, P, if you're welcome to stay. And I do believe we have, just checking on Rohit, he is still with us also.
Yes.
So I think before we hand over to Sri, and Sri, thank you for your patience as well there also. We'd like to thank our panel. Raman, any closing comments and a thank you to the panel, please?
There are a lot of things to be discussed, so today running short of time, I'd like to get in touch with the panelists, Mr. Rohit, Manchanda, Shivangi and Prerana. A lot of things have to be discussed in details. The devil lies in the details, There are a lot of opportunities I have in it for you. I'd like to take it offhand with you separately. Thank you.
Thank you. We've tried to, just capture the Australian and Indian startup sector in about 45 minutes. So there was no way we were going to be able to do that. But thank you so much for the panel and giving it a good crack. So look, you're welcome to stay, but I'm going to hand over now to Sri, and we will stay in touch, obviously. P, for those who want to stay in touch, P is back on the GoToWebinar with My Security Media on Monday. And Shivangi, thank you so much for your time. Rohit, we will definitely be staying in touch with you also. Thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Thank you. See you guys. Sri, are you all set there at your end?
So you can see my screen, right?
We can, yes, very good.
So good afternoon, everyone. So thank you, Mr. Chris and Mr. Raman for providing the VMTL this opportunity to present at a global stage. So my name is Sri Vathsen, and I'm the CEO of VMTL, and I'm a chartered engineer in India, and I'm also associated with multiple engineering membership, including Engineering New Zealand. So I have actually done my master's in Germany, and then I was working in Robert Bosch, then a company in Singapore in related to equipment manufacturing. And I'm basically a mechanical engineer. So VMTL was started in 2018, and our mission was to enable digital transformation, and the latest technology should be reached to startups, MSMEs, and other organizations to make them, enable them to compete at a global stage. So our mission has been used by innovation. So we use innovation as a method to improve startups, MSMEs, and all other partners. So we are a Startup India approved company, and we are also ISO approved company, and we also have other credentials, and we are associated with ADCAI, Mr. Raman, their Association for Defense. And what I would like to share is that what we do at our company. So as you can see, the market need currently is we need to reach faster, we need to have very low cost, and then the solution should be clean and green. So this is a major requirement in the market. So to have such a requirement and then innovate is a lot of stress for all the companies. So how do we clear this? So innovation has power to transform a company from a normal company to a market leader. Unfortunately, costs and time to innovate is a lot of problem for the company. So what I'd like to say is we have heard some entrepreneurs speak about this. Like, for example, I'd like to quote Elon Musk, who said that if things are not failing, you're not innovating. Similarly, there is another Japanese entrepreneur who says, want to increase innovation, that means you need to lower the cost of failure. And VMTL is exactly doing that we reduce the failure cost. So how do we do this is by bringing in innovation. So there are three domains that we innovate in. One is product development, the other one is process, and then the third one is sales and marketing. So the first one is product innovation. So product innovation has been happening for a very long time, but our idea is quite different. So we want to do virtual prototype. So everything starts from virtual as an idea and then comes out as a product as a virtual solution. So what is the benefit of this whole idea is that it brings the market time is very fast, and we innovate with speed, because when everything is virtual, you change at a very fast pace, and all your product data, everything is in terms of models and available in digital platform that enables you to be a digital enterprise. So we have the benefit of developing hundreds of prototypes in very few days, in a very short time, and we will be able to launch before the competitors when you have everything in virtual, because you have the product functioning in your hands before you're making it. Similarly, what we have as an experience in this is that we were able to develop 12 working concepts in 1 week for a pick and place mechanism for one of our vendors. And also we were able to do some optimization tasks, everything virtual, creating very lightest product in their market, and we made our customer market leader. So these kind of innovations are possible when you adopt to a technology. So product innovation is one of our key domain of interest, and the development is done completely in terms of softwares and computers and with very good capabilities. So we will be able to, once you give us a requirement, we will be able to give you a prototype that you can see for yourself and also share with your customers. So this is some kind of innovation we are enabling using technology. So this is the first product development innovation. The next one is also quite important, is process innovation, specific to the MRO industry. Because this MRO industry is spending a lot of money and time, and also has a lot of risks involved during this process, and also involves a lot of cost in training. So how do we do it is we convert the whole MRO thing into digital asset. So we build digital assets, we develop interactive 3D documentation, either in 3D itself, in your tablet you can use it, or it can be an AR, VR with additional devices that will make you work in parallel, and it can also help you to train. Benefits is that it speeds up your process, it lowers errors, human errors, because it can show you what it has to be done as per the standard. And then you also have a reduction in skilled manpower requirement, because you don't need everyone to be skilled, as everything is available in data. And the applications are connected with OEM. So anything happens at the OEM updates, then you get the update directly at the MRO side. So this is a very important innovation that is required in the MRO industry. And as we can see in the various market reports, that we have seen that the digital MRO market is growing a lot, and it will continue to grow for the next 10 years. So for example, what we have done was we have developed some interactive manuals for simple module maintenance as a demonstration. But what we know from the market is Boeing has developed manuals for the specific MRO purpose for their own aircrafts. So this industry is also growing, and we would be part of this, providing solutions to different MRO requirements. So this is the process side of innovation. The last is the innovation in marketing and sales. Recently, we know that AR, VR industry is picking up, and what we would like to leverage is that we use AR and VR to promote, to sell the product, to market the product, as this provides sales before making, and it has another benefit that you can have high level of customization, and obviously the end result that we want is happy customers and also lower inventory costs. So the major example that I can directly share and everybody can take a look at is the IKEA Place app. So this one is in the market already, and you can place these furnitures or their products inside your home using their application. And similar thing is done by BMW, but it will be released in 2021 as the AR app. So you will be able to customize completely your car, and you will get the real experience. And once you have the experience, you can purchase the product. So this is one of the service that we are doing, and we have done this for pick and place robot, where we were able to directly show the end customer what will happen with the robot, and they were very happy to purchase this product before we even manufactured it. So we can confidently say that AR, VR based marketing can increase your sales. And also I would like to say that due to the COVID situations, due to you are not able to travel to the marketplace or all these details, you will be able to use this as a strategy, where you can also make a webinar of your product and then ask your customer to operate your product, and then you'll be able to sell it. So this is 3 kinds of innovations that we primarily do as a service. And we are associated with ADCAI. So they will provide us a lot of support during this course, and they are the ones who provided us this opportunity. And we are also approved vendors of CVRD. So we are able to attend to defense projects. And we are also incubated with Triple IT, this is an institution in India, that educational institution that provide us with interns and education assistants. So we will be able to train the students as well who are coming to the market. So this, our company as a whole will be able to provide a digital transformation for every single company, and we are more specially supporting startups and MSMEs, because they are the ones struggling with innovations, but they have ideas. And we also support large companies, and if you require any of this service, and if you are interested, you can contact us through these information that you can see on the screen. And I'm myself as a CEO. I'm located in Singapore, and strategically located, I would say, because I'm able to feel hands-on the latest technology which is implemented in Singapore and try to implement in India. And I will be very happy also to support and implement this technology in Australia as well.
I was going to say, you're going to have to get down to Sydney, Sri, and if Rohit's still on the line, he'll be like, okay, you should be based out here in Sydney at the startup hubs for sure. That IKEA app, that's something you developed, was it?
No, that was not ours, but I'm just saying as an example.
Okay, that's what you're doing. Okay, I understand. Well, look, your details are on the screen. Thank you very much for that. And I'm just conscious of the time. I'm sorry. Hopefully we'll have you back. And I think once you've got a nice case study to provide as well, we'd love to hear about that. And we'll obviously stay in touch via Raman as well. So I'm just going to take back.
What we can do is then give us some downloads through the Chris website. So you can share some case studies and downloads through Chris. So you'll be able to reach to the market in Australia also. And we would like to connect you to the other startups in Australia also. Thank you, Chris. Over to you.
Good on you. Thank you very much. And look, on that note, we're going to close off. It looks like we're going to go for a 90-minute session. We'll happily put you on the marketplace too, Sri, in terms of that. That's what it's for as well. Look, just to close off, that was a very interesting session for the audience. We have a very broad series subject matter, but I think we've touched on pretty much all of that today in terms of this particular session. And for next week, something that was also raised, a bit like cyber education, is standards. So we have a very special panel on next week. We did invite some ladies. I'm sorry to have another manel on our series. We do try to have a diversity here, but we've got diversity of country at least. So we have a couple of my Sydney colleagues, Govinda Pal Singh and Chirag Jossi, both with ISACA here in Sydney. And we'd be joined again with Inderjit Singh, Colonel Inderjit Singh, who is associated with the New Delhi ISACA chapter, and he's kindly given his time to us once again for next week. And Sir Young, SY, in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, also with the ISACA chapter in Malaysia. And I think it's really good to get the ISACA auditors. Most of these, in fact, I think all of us have a certified information systems auditor certification, and the certifications are on our India series page. So these gents will provide some real insights into cybersecurity, IoT, smart cities and infrastructure, and some of those key standards that we should be auditing and benchmarking against also. We touched briefly on episode 4 from last week. That is now on our YouTube channel with Air Vice Marshal Sinha and Dr. Tobias Feakin also, so welcome to catch up on that. Some updated reports on the marketplace. I touched briefly on the BISA report in terms of impacts and implications of COVID, some recent NIST report on securing manufacturing industrial control systems for behavioural anomaly detection, very interesting report out now. In terms of that standard, and some other reports there on the marketplace. Hang on, go back one. Tomorrow, I'm giving a sit rep to ACES International New South Wales. And Raman, while I've got you, I've just realised I didn't put, you're giving a talk to Aviation Week. And I don't think I got the link in the end. You're giving a report this week as well?
No, next week.
Next week, okay. Well, we'll have the details on for next week and also on the website. But tomorrow, I'm just giving a bit of an update on market trends and opportunities to the New South Wales chapter in New Zealand. And then on Monday, we are joined by the Honourable Minister Victor Dominello, the Minister for Customer Service in New South Wales, and Dr. Jed Horner, the Strategic Advocacy Manager for Standards Australia, and Prerana Mehta, once again, the Chief of Ecosystem Development for AustCyber, and Simon Bush, who's the General Manager for the Australian the Australian Information Industry Association, the AIIA. And that panel will look at cyber capability and resilience building in the Australian market. So very well attended so far. I think we've had approaching 150 registrations for that particular session. So very well received, and please join us on Monday if you can. 3D Printing World 2020, one more plug, and that is across India starts mid-August. So you should have the details for that by now. And these slides jumping ahead. These books are still available. If you visit the marketplace, there's a banner there on the main page. Just answer one simple question. You'll get a free copy of Identity Attack Vectors, courtesy of Beyond Trust. And this session is coming up to a full over 90 minutes. It will be available. It was recorded. We've captured everything and will be on our YouTube channel, and Raman will share that out with the association. So I'm so sorry we've run out of time. Anything else we'll cover off on next week with our technical auditing standards. And on that note, thank you once again, Raman, for joining us, and your association members. Sri, thank you so much for joining us, and a very interesting presentation. Mr. Manchanda is still also on the line. Thank you so much, Mr. Commissioner, and Shivangi Jain from Startup India. Really good, insightful session and well over time. So thank you very much for joining us on the Virtual Educational India Reach webinar series. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All the best.
Thank you, Rohit. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. It was a very educative session today.
Very good. Bye-bye.
Thank you.